My daughter-in-law told me I was embarrassing them and to stay in my lane. She said this to me in front of 180 guests right after I handed over $85,000 for her dream wedding. I'm Harry Thompson, 61 years old, and I've been fixing broken toilets and mopping floors at Lincoln Elementary for 23 years. To Ashley, I was the pathetic janitor who'd somehow scraped together wedding money. What she didn't know? While begging resort staff for honeymoon upgrades, she was talking to my employees about my property. The luxury resort she was desperate to impress? I own it. $2.8 million. Bought it with cash. But that's just one property. See, while Ashley was busy explaining to everyone how poor I am, I was quietly sitting on a $3 million real estate empire. Want to see what happens when people find out the broke janitor actually owns their dream destination? Stick around. And hey, drop a comment letting me know if you've ever been underestimated like this. Here's how I went from charity case to property mogul in one phone call. Let me start from the beginning so you understand how we got here. My wife Margaret died 4 years ago. Cancer. We'd been married 32 years, and losing her nearly broke me. Danny was all I had left, and when he met Ashley 2 years ago, I thought maybe our family could heal. Ashley came from money. Her father owned 3 car dealerships until 2019, when the market crashed and took their fortune with it. But she still carried herself like royalty. Designer clothes, expensive car, the works. When Danny proposed last March, I offered to pay for the wedding. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Danny's a high school science teacher making $42,000 a year. Toot. Ashley works marketing for some boutique firm. Together, they couldn't afford the kind of wedding Ashley dreamed about. "Dad, you don't have to do this," Danny said when I handed him the cashier's check. Check number 4429851 from First National Bank. $85,000 written in my careful handwriting. "It's what your mother would have wanted," I told him. And it was true. Ashley's reaction was different. She looked at the check like it was contaminated. "Where did you get this kind of money?" she asked. "I've been saving," I said simply. She exchanged a look with Danny. That look said everything. How does a janitor save $85,000? I drive a 2018 Ford F-150 with 142,000 miles on it. I live in the same 1,200 square foot ranch house I bought in 1998 for $180,000. I wear Carhartt work jackets and Timberland boots that I replace every 4 years, whether they need it or not. To someone like Ashley, I looked exactly like what I was supposed to look like. A working man who'd scraped together every penny for his son's happiness. The truth was more complicated. After Margaret's funeral, I got a $250,000 life insurance payout. But that wasn't my real money. That wasn't why I could write an $85,000 check like it was grocery money. For 25 years, while I fixed broken toilets and mopped cafeteria floors, I'd been buying rental properties. Started with a duplex in 1999. Used the rental income to buy another, then another. By the time Ashley came into our lives, I owned 15 properties scattered across 3 counties. Not mansions, working-class rentals. 2-bedroom homes for young families, small apartments for college students, a few commercial spaces downtown. Nothing flashy, everything practical. The properties generated about $28,000 a month in rental income. After taxes and maintenance, I cleared about $20,000 every month for 15 years. I didn't live like a millionaire because I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I lived like a janitor because I was a janitor who happened to own $3.2 million in real estate. But Ashley didn't know any of this. To her, I was the embarrassing blue-collar father-in-law who somehow had wedding money. The wedding planning meetings started in April. Ashley took charge immediately. "Harry, we appreciate your contribution," she'd say, always using my first name instead of Dad. "But Danny and I will handle the actual decisions." I didn't mind. I wanted them to have their dream wedding. But the comments started early. At the venue walkthrough, the wedding coordinator mentioned the budget. $85,000 is quite generous," she said to me. "You must be very proud." Ashley laughed. "Oh, Harry's been saving his pennies for years." "Haven't you, Harry?" The wedding coordinator looked confused. Ashley kept talking. "He's the maintenance supervisor at the elementary school. You know how those government jobs have good retirement plans?" I wasn't retired. I was 61 and still worked every day because I loved helping those kids. But Ashley painted me as some charity case who'd emptied his 401k for her wedding. At the caterer's office, it happened again. The father of the groom is covering the full amount, Ashley announced. He's been planning this for decades, apparently. She made it sound like I'd been hoarding money in coffee cans. During the cake tasting, the baker asked about our budget. Well, Harry here managed to scrape together enough for a decent cake, Ashley said, patting my shoulder like I was a dog. We're grateful he could make it work. Danny didn't say anything. He looked uncomfortable, but he didn't defend me. That should have been my first warning. The dress shopping trip was the worst. Ashley insisted I come along, said she wanted both fathers there. Her dad had lost most of his money, but he still dressed the part. Expensive suit, gold watch, the works. This is Danny's father, Ashley told the boutique owner. Harry's been so generous with the wedding fund. The woman smiled politely. How wonderful. What do you do, Harry? I work at the elementary school, I said. He's the janitor, Ashley corrected. Been there forever. Very dedicated to his mop and bucket. She laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. The boutique owner's smile got tighter. Ashley's father looked at his shoes. That night, I called my sister-in-law, Ruth. She'd been Margaret's maid of honor 32 years ago, and she knew about my properties. She'd been a bank president for 20 years before retiring. She's testing you, Ruth said, seeing how much disrespect you'll take. Maybe I should tell them, I said. Tell them what? That you're not actually poor? That'll go over well. Ruth was right. If I revealed my wealth now, it would look like I'd been lying. Or worse, like I was trying to show off. So I stayed quiet. But Ashley's comments were getting bolder, and the wedding was still 4 months away. By June, Ashley's attitude had shifted from condescending to openly dismissive. She started posting about the wedding on social media. Pictures of the venue, the dress, the flowers, always with captions about how grateful she was for family sacrifices and blue-collar generosity. One post showed the engagement ring Danny had bought her, a Tiffany solitaire that cost him $12,000, according to Danny. The caption read, "When your father-in-law empties his savings account so you can have your dream wedding." Hashtag grateful, hashtag family, hashtag blessed. The comments were predictable. So sweet that he spent his retirement money on you. Janitors don't make much. He must really love you. Hope he has enough left for his own expenses. Each comment was a small knife. Ashley hearted every single one. But the real problem wasn't the social media humiliation. It was what I was losing in the process. At the school, word had spread about the wedding fund. Dr. Mitchell, the principal, pulled me aside after a faculty meeting. Harry, I heard about your generous gift to Danny. That's incredibly selfless. It's what fathers do, I said. Still, $85,000 is a lot of money on a maintenance supervisor's salary. I hope you're not putting yourself in a difficult position. He meant well, but I could see the concern in his eyes. The same concern I'd started seeing everywhere. The hardware store owner where I bought supplies stopped charging me full price. Family discount, he'd say, winking. I heard about the wedding fund. My barber started refusing tips. Keep your money, Harry. You've got enough expenses. At church, people looked at me with a mixture of admiration and pity. The man who'd given everything for his son's happiness. I was becoming a charity case in my own community. But the worst part was Danny's reaction when I tried to talk to him about Ashley's behavior. Dad, she doesn't mean anything by it, he said. That's just how she talks. She introduced me as just a janitor to her college friends. You're a janitor, Dad. There's nothing wrong with that. He was missing the point. I wasn't ashamed of my work. I was tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. Your mother wouldn't have tolerated this, I said. Danny's face hardened. Don't bring Mom into this. Ashley's not Mom, and she doesn't have to act like Mom. That stung, because he was right. Ashley wasn't Margaret. Margaret had married a poor man and built a life with him. Ashley was marrying a poor man and expecting someone else to pay for her lifestyle. In July, Ashley's parents invited us to dinner at their house. Even after losing their money, they lived in a 4,000-square-foot colonial in the expensive part of town. The mortgage payments had to be killing them, but they kept up appearances. Harry, we can't thank you enough for your generosity, Ashley's mother said over dinner. It must be such a sacrifice. No sacrifice, I said. I wanted to do it. Ashley's father leaned forward. Still, 85,000 is serious money for someone in your position. We appreciate you stretching your budget. I'm not stretching anything, I said quietly. Ashley laughed. Dad, don't be modest. You've been saving for this your whole life. That was it. The assumption that I'd spent my entire working life accumulating just enough money to pay for one wedding. That everything I'd ever earned had led to this one moment of blue-collar generosity. After dinner, Ashley cornered me in the kitchen. Harry, I need you to understand something, she said. This wedding reflects on all of us. I need you to present, well, what does that mean? It means maybe don't mention the janitorial thing to everyone you meet. Maybe let people assume you do something more, professional. I stared at her. You want me to lie about my job? I want you to be strategic, for Danny's sake. That night I drove home in my old pickup truck, thinking about stakes. What was I really losing here? Money? Number? The 85,000 barely dented my net worth. Respect? Definitely. But from people whose respect I'd never needed before. The real loss was something deeper. I was losing my sense of self, becoming someone I didn't recognize. A grateful charity case instead of a man who'd worked hard and built something quietly successful. Something had to change, but I still hoped Ashley would come to her senses before the wedding. I was wrong. The breaking point came during the final tasting at Riverside Manor in August. The venue was everything Ashley had dreamed of. Mahogany reception hall, crystal chandeliers, gardens overlooking the river, $15,000 just for the rental, not counting catering, flowers, or the orchestra she'd insisted on. We were meeting with the wedding coordinator, going over last-minute details. Ashley had brought her maid of honor, a lawyer named Jennifer who'd known Ashley since college. Danny was there, looking uncomfortable in his one good suit. Now about the final payment, the coordinator said. We'll need the remaining $25,000 2 weeks before the wedding. No problem, I said. I can write you a check today if that's easier. The coordinator smiled. Wonderful. You must be very proud of your son. I am, I said. That's when Ashley decided to perform. Oh, Harry's been planning this for years, she announced to the room. He's been saving every penny of his janitor salary. It's really quite touching. Jennifer, the maid of honor, looked at me with what I can only describe as pity. How noble, she said. It's rare to see such sacrifice these days. It's not a sacrifice, I said quietly. Ashley laughed. Dad, don't be modest. Everyone knows maintenance workers don't make much. You've probably been eating beans and rice for months to make this happen. The coordinator looked uncomfortable. Danny stared at his shoes. I decided to try one more time to have an honest conversation. Ashley, can I speak with you privately? We stepped into the hallway. I kept my voice calm. I need you to stop describing my contribution as charity. I'm not doing that. You just told strangers I've been eating beans and rice to afford your wedding. She crossed her arms. Harry, I'm grateful for what you've done. But let's be realistic about what it represents. What does it represent? A working man's life savings. Your big gesture. The most money you'll ever spend on anything. I took a deep breath. What if I told you it wasn't my life savings? What do you mean? What if I told you that $85,000 was just money I had available? That it didn't require any sacrifice at all? Ashley's expression shifted from confusion to something harder. Harry, I've seen your house. I've seen your truck. I know what a janitor makes. Don't try to make this into something it's not. I'm not trying to make it into anything. I'm trying to tell you the truth. The truth is you're a maintenance worker who saved up for his son's wedding. There's no shame in that. But don't pretend you're something you're not. Her voice had gotten louder. Through the doorway, I could see the coordinator and Jennifer pretending not to listen. I'm not pretending anything, I said. But I'm also not a charity case. Ashley's laugh was sharp. Harry, look around. This venue costs more than you make in a year. The flowers cost more than your truck payment. You're out of your league here, and that's okay. But don't act like you belong. Don't act like I belong. You know what I mean. This is a different world from mopping floors and unclogging toilets. Just stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Those 4 words hit me like a physical blow. I walked back into the reception hall. Danny looked up hopefully. Everything okay, Dad? Fine, I said. But it wasn't fine. Ashley had just told me I didn't belong at my own son's wedding, that my contribution was appreciated, but my presence was tolerated. The coordinator finished her presentation. We discussed table arrangements, music timing, and the photographer's schedule. Ashley dominated the conversation, making decisions with the confidence of someone spending other people's money. As we prepared to leave, I made one last attempt at dignity. Ashley, I'd like to give a toast at the reception. Something short about Danny and family. She exchanged a look with Jennifer. Actually, Harry, we've already planned the toasts. Danny's best man, my maid of honor, my father. We're trying to keep things streamlined. A father's toast is traditional. Your toast would be sweet, I'm sure, but maybe not the right tone for our guests. Not the right tone, because a janitor's words wouldn't match the crystal chandeliers and $12 glasses of wine. Danny finally spoke up. Ashley, maybe Dad could... Danny, trust me on this. I know our crowd. Our crowd, not his crowd, not family, her crowd. I drove home that night thinking about lanes. Ashley wanted me to stay in mine. The problem was she had no idea which lane was actually mine. But she was about to find out. I had some business calls to make. The next morning, I sat in my kitchen with my flip phone and a cup of coffee, looking at a list of numbers I rarely called during daylight hours. Most people don't realize how much business gets done before 7 a.m. Property managers, contractors, maintenance crews, they all start early. When you own 15 rental properties, you learn to work around everyone else's schedule. My first call was to Patricia Anderson, who managed my commercial properties downtown. Harry, early morning for you. Everything okay? Fine, Patty. Question for you. That new restaurant space on Main Street, we still getting $1,500 a month for that. $1,600 as of July. Why? Just checking. Also, I may need some documentation pulled together. Property values, rental income, the works. Nothing urgent, but maybe have it ready. Sure thing. Business loan application? Something like that. My second call was to Ruth, who was already up reading the newspaper. You sound different, she said after I explained yesterday's conversation. Different how? Like you've made a decision. She was right. I had made a decision. I was tired of being treated like a grateful poor person when I wasn't poor, and I was definitely done being grateful for the privilege of being insulted. What are you thinking? Ruth asked. I'm thinking Ashley wants me to stay in my lane. I'm thinking she should be careful what she wishes for. Ruth chuckled. Your sister would have handled this months ago. Margaret never had to deal with Ashley. No, but she wouldn't have let it get this far. She'd have set boundaries. That afternoon, I stopped by the bank to see Tom Wilson, who'd handled my accounts for 20 years. Tom's wife had been Margaret's best friend, and he'd been at our kitchen table for more dinner parties than I could count. Harry, good to see you. How's the wedding planning? Interesting. Tom, I need a favor. Could you prepare a financial summary? Assets, property values, monthly income? Just a simple one-page overview. Tom raised an eyebrow. Everything okay? Everything's fine. I just need some people to understand my actual financial position. Ah! Tom had met Ashley at Danny's birthday party last year. He'd seen her reaction when I'd picked up the dinner check without blinking. I can have that ready by Friday. That evening, Danny called. Dad, Ashley feels bad about yesterday. She didn't mean to hurt your feelings. She didn't hurt my feelings. She's just stressed about the wedding. You know how brides get. I did know how brides got. Margaret had been stressed before our wedding, too. But Margaret's stress had made her more considerate, not less. Danny, has Ashley ever asked about my finances? What do you mean? I mean, has she ever wondered how a janitor saves $85,000? Long pause. Dad, are you okay? You've been acting strange lately. I'm fine, answered the question. She assumes you've been saving for a long time. Maybe you had some help from Mom's life insurance. What if I told you the $85,000 wasn't from life insurance or savings? What if I told you it was just available money? Dad, I don't understand what you're getting at. I'm getting at the fact that your wife thinks she knows everything about my financial situation, but she's never actually asked. Why would she ask? It's none of her business. That stopped me. He was right. It wasn't Ashley's business how much money I had or where it came from. But it became her business when she started publicly describing my contribution as a pathetic sacrifice. Danny, do you know how much money I make? I know you do okay. You paid off the house. You've got good insurance. You seem comfortable. Comfortable. That was the word everyone used. Harry Thompson, the comfortable janitor who'd stretched his comfort to pay for a wedding. What if I told you comfortable was an understatement? Dad, what are you trying to say? I almost told him everything right then. About the properties, the rental income, the fact that $85,000 represented about 6 weeks of revenue for me. Instead, I said, nothing, son, just thinking out loud. But I wasn't thinking out loud. I was planning. Friday morning, Tom handed me the financial summary. 1 page, points, very clear numbers. Total property value, $3.2 million. Monthly rental income, $28,000. Net worth after debts and mortgages, $2.1 million. I folded the paper and put it in my wallet. The wedding was 3 weeks away. The rehearsal dinner was held at Ashley's parents' country club, a place where the monthly dues probably exceeded my official salary. Ashley had insisted on a formal dinner, even though Danny had wanted something casual. 80 people, including her college friends, his teacher colleagues, and both sets of family. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for Margaret's funeral. Navy blue, nothing fancy, but it fit well and was appropriate for the occasion. Ashley wore a $500 dress and her grandmother's pearls. She looked beautiful, which made what happened next even more painful. The evening started normally. Cocktails, small talk, everyone being polite. I talked to Dr. Mitchell about the new playground equipment the school was installing. I chatted with Danny's college roommate about his new job in Columbus. Then came the toasts. Ashley's father went first, talking about watching his daughter grow up and how proud he was of the woman she'd become. Sweet, appropriate, exactly what a father should say. Danny's best man went next, sharing funny stories about their friendship and making everyone laugh. Then Ashley stood up. I wanted to say a few words about family, she began, and about the incredible generosity we've experienced while planning this wedding. I should have known where this was going. Some of you know that Harry, Danny's father, has made this entire celebration possible. He's funded our dream wedding out of his own pocket. Polite applause around the room. What makes this even more special is understanding the sacrifice this represents. Harry works as a maintenance supervisor at Lincoln Elementary. He's been there for 23 years, mopping floors and fixing broken things. More applause, but I could feel the energy in the room shifting. People were looking at me with that familiar mixture of admiration and pity. Harry could have used this money for his retirement, or for a new truck, or for any number of things. Instead, he chose to give his son the wedding of his dreams. She raised her glass. To blue-collar generosity. To fathers who put their children first. To Harry Thompson, who proves that the size of your paycheck doesn't determine the size of your heart. The room erupted in applause. People were smiling at me, nodding approvingly. Dr. Mitchell gave me a thumbs up. Danny looked emotional, but I felt humiliated. Ashley had just announced to 80 people that I was a poor janitor who'd emptied his savings account for her wedding. She'd made me into a charity case in front of my son's friends, my colleagues, and her entire social circle. After the applause died down, Ashley's college roommate, a woman named Victoria, who worked for some investment firm in New York, leaned over to me. That was so moving, she said. It must be wonderful to have something so important to spend your life savings on. It wasn't my life savings, I said quietly. She looked confused. Oh, I thought Ashley said... Ashley assumed. Before Victoria could respond, Ashley's maid of honor, Jennifer, tapped her wine glass for attention. I'd also like to say something about generosity, Jennifer announced. Working in family law, I see a lot of financial disputes, but I've never seen anything as selfless as what Harry has done. She turned to look at me directly. Harry, you represent everything that's right about American values. Working hard, living modestly, and sacrificing for family. In a world of people who spend money they don't have on things they don't need, you saved money you did have for something that truly matters. More applause. I felt like I was being buried alive under their praise. Jennifer wasn't finished. I did some research because I was curious about the numbers. The median salary for a school maintenance supervisor in Ohio is about $45,000. After taxes, housing, and basic living expenses, saving $85,000 probably took Harry 15 to 20 years of incredibly disciplined budgeting. The room was silent now, hanging on every word. That means Harry started saving for this wedding when Danny was in elementary school. Long before he even met Ashley, he was setting aside money for a future daughter-in-law he hadn't met yet, for a wedding that was just a distant possibility. People were getting emotional. I saw several women wiping their eyes. That, Jennifer concluded, is what unconditional love looks like. The standing ovation lasted almost a minute. I sat there, trapped in my chair, while 80 people celebrated my imaginary poverty and fictional sacrifice. They were applauding a story that wasn't true, about a man who didn't exist. The worst part was seeing Danny's face. He was crying. Actual tears of pride and gratitude for his father's incredible sacrifice. After the applause finally stopped, Ashley's mother stood up. "Harry, I know this might be presumptuous, but I'd like to help you with something." "Oh, no. My husband still has connections in the automotive industry. If you need a more reliable vehicle, something newer and safer, I'd be happy to make some calls. A man who's given so much for his family deserves to drive something dependable." The offer was meant kindly. She was trying to help the poor janitor who'd spent his retirement money on her daughter's wedding. But it was the final straw. I stood up slowly, and the room went quiet. "Thank you," I said. "That's very kind. But I'm comfortable with my current situation." Ashley's mother smiled. "Of course you are. You're a very dignified man, but dignity doesn't pay for car repairs." She meant well. They all meant well. But they were offering charity to a man who owned more property than most of them would accumulate in their lifetimes. I looked around the room at all the concerned, sympathetic faces. These people had just spent 10 minutes celebrating my poverty and planning my financial rescue. Tomorrow was the wedding. In front of 180 guests, Ashley was going to continue this performance. She was going to present me as the grateful poor father who'd given everything for his son's happiness, unless I stopped her. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Patricia's number. "Excuse me," I said to the table. "I need to make a quick business call." I stepped outside onto the country club's terrace, where the evening air was cooler and I could think clearly. Patricia answered on the second ring. "Harry?" "It's kind of late for a business call." "I know. I need a favor, and it's important." "Sure, what's up?" "Tomorrow's my son's wedding. There's going to be a situation where I need people to understand my actual financial position. Can you put together a portfolio summary, something official looking that shows property values, rental income, the works?" "Of course. How official are we talking?" "Official enough that it would impress lawyers and investment professionals." Patricia had been managing properties for 20 years. She understood immediately. "Someone's been underestimating you." Something like that. "I can have everything ready by morning. Property deeds, income statements, market valuations. Want me to include the Azure Bay numbers?" Azure Bay. I'd forgotten about Azure Bay. 3 years ago, I'd bought a struggling resort property 2 hours north of Columbus. 47 rooms, restaurant, conference facilities, the works. The previous owner had over-leveraged and needed to sell quickly. I'd paid cash. $2.8 million. Spent another $400,000 on renovations. Now it generated almost $500,000 in annual profit during peak season. "Yes," I said. "Include Azure Bay." "The whole portfolio?" "Everything. And Patty, I might need you to be available tomorrow afternoon. I may need to verify some information over the phone." "No problem. Harry, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I'm just tired of people making assumptions." After I hung up, I called Ruth. "How did it go tonight?" she asked. I told her about the toasts, the standing ovation, the offer of automotive charity. "Good Lord," Ruth said. "They actually researched your salary?" "Jennifer's a lawyer. She probably thinks she's being helpful." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to let Ashley have her moment tomorrow. Let her introduce me however she wants. But I'm also going to make sure the truth comes out." "How?" "Ashley's been bragging about their honeymoon. 5 nights at Azure Bay Resort, premium suite, spa treatments, the works." Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed. "Oh, Harry. You don't mean Azure Bay Resort, 47 rooms, $2.8 million property, fully renovated, 5-star rating on TripAdvisor, and you own it. I own it. Ruth was still laughing. She's going to honeymoon at a resort owned by the poor janitor? She's going to try to. But there might be some complications with their reservation. We talked for another few minutes, working out the details. Ruth would be at the wedding tomorrow, sitting with the family. She knew everyone involved, and more importantly, everyone knew and respected her. When the moment came, her word would carry weight. I went back inside to find Danny looking for me. Dad, where did you go? People wanted to talk to you. Just needed some air. Dad, I want you to know what Ashley said tonight, what Jennifer said. It means everything to me that you do this. My son was looking at me with such love and gratitude that I almost told him everything right then. But tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow the truth would come out naturally, in context, where everyone could understand what had really been happening. Danny, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you know where you're going on your honeymoon? Azure Bay Resort. Ashley found it online, said it was perfect. 5-star reviews, beautiful location. We're staying in one of their premium suites. Sounds expensive. It is. Ashley used our credit card for the deposit, but she's hoping to charm them into some upgrades once we get there. You know how she is with people. I knew exactly how she was with people. The rest of the evening passed quietly. People kept approaching me with compliments about my generosity and questions about my retirement plans. I answered politely, but my mind was on tomorrow. I drove home in my old pickup truck, thinking about lanes again. Ashley had told me to stay in mine. Tomorrow, she'd find out which lane was actually mine. I spent an hour that night looking through property files, making sure I had everything I might need. Property deeds, income statements, tax returns, banking records, 25 years of careful documentation. Before bed, I made one final call to Azure Bay's front desk. Azure Bay Resort. This is Amanda. How can I help you? Amanda, this is Harry Thompson. I need to speak with your manager about a reservation. Of course, Mr. Thompson. Is this about the Thompson party checking in tomorrow? It is. There may be some questions about their status. I want to make sure everyone's prepared. Understood. I'll make sure the manager is available. I hung up and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Same face I'd had for 61 years. Same worn work clothes hanging on the bedroom chair. Same modest house around me. But tomorrow, people were going to see the rest of the picture. Tomorrow, Ashley was going to learn that staying in your lane only works if you know whose lane you're in. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. Danny looked handsome in his rented tuxedo. Ashley looked stunning in her $3,500 dress. The flowers were perfect. The music was elegant, and the weather cooperated with clear skies and gentle breezes. For 2 hours, I forgot about everything else and just enjoyed watching my son get married. The problem started at the reception. Ashley had arranged the seating carefully. Head table for the wedding party, family tables near the front, friends and colleagues scattered throughout the mahogany-paneled reception hall at Riverside Manor. I was seated at the family table with Ruth, Danny's Uncle Mike, and Ashley's grandparents. A respectable position, but not the head table. Ashley had explained that space was limited, and they wanted to keep the head table small. What she really wanted was to control the narrative without my inconvenient presence nearby. The first hour went smoothly. Cocktails, appetizers, small talk about how beautiful everything looked. People kept complimenting the venue, the flowers, the orchestra Ashley had insisted on hiring. This must have cost a fortune, I heard someone say. Harry paid for all of it, someone else replied. The father of the groom. He's been saving for years. Then came the formal introductions. Ashley stood at the microphone, radiant in her wedding dress, ready to present her new family to the assembled guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the man who made this entire celebration possible. Danny's father has worked as a maintenance supervisor at Lincoln Elementary School for 23 years. Through discipline, sacrifice, and unconditional love, he saved enough money to give us the wedding of our dreams. She gestured toward me. Please join me in thanking Harold Thompson, who proves that the most generous hearts often come in the most humble packages. The applause was thunderous. 180 people stood and clapped for the poor janitor's incredible sacrifice. I remained seated. Ashley continued, her voice carrying easily across the room. Harry represents everything beautiful, retry, continue, edit, about working class values, while other people our age are focused on luxury cars and expensive vacations. Harry chose to live modestly so he could give his family something special. More applause. I could see people wiping their eyes. Harry drives a 20-year-old truck and lives in the same small house he's owned forever because his priorities aren't about impressing people. They're about loving people. She wasn't wrong about my priorities, but she was wrong about everything else. So tonight, as we celebrate in this beautiful venue, eating this incredible food, dancing to this amazing music, let's remember that it's all possible. Because one man chose family over fortune, love over luxury. The standing ovation lasted almost 2 minutes. When it finally ended, Ashley held up her hand for quiet. And now, I have a special surprise. Danny and I are honeymooning at Azure Bay Resort, one of the most exclusive destinations in Ohio. 5 nights in their premium suite. She beamed at the crowd. We're hoping to charm our way into some upgrades once we arrive. You know how it is with these fancy places. Sometimes a smile and a kind word can work wonders. That was my cue. I stood up slowly and pulled out my phone. Ashley, I called out, my voice carrying clearly across the quiet room. Actually, you might want to call Azure Bay before you leave tomorrow. She looked confused. Why? There might be some issues with your reservation. The room was completely silent now. 180 people watching this exchange. What kind of issues? Ashley asked. I scrolled through my contacts and found Patricia's number. Let me call the property manager. She can explain better than I can. I dialed Patricia's number and put the phone on speaker. Harry Thompson Properties, this is Patricia. A few people at nearby tables leaned forward. Harry Thompson Properties? Patty, I'm at my son's wedding reception. I've got you on speaker. Can you tell everyone about the Azure Bay situation? Of course. Are you referring to the Thompson honeymoon reservation? That's right. Patricia's voice was clear and professional. Well, we've been reviewing the booking, and there are some questions about payment authorization. The reservation was made with a credit card, but given the premium suite upgrade requests, we need to verify the guest's relationship to the property owner. Ashley's face had gone pale. Property owner? Yes, Patricia continued. Azure Bay Resort is privately owned. The owner prefers to approve all premium accommodations personally. Who's the owner? Ashley asked, though I could see in her expression that she was beginning to understand. Harold Thompson. He purchased the property 3 years ago. 47 rooms, full-service spa, conference facilities. Beautiful place. Mr. Thompson has invested quite a bit in renovations. The reception hall was dead silent. Ashley stared at me. You own Azure Bay Resort? I do. But you're a janitor. I'm also a property investor. I own 15 rental properties across 3 counties, plus Azure Bay. Ruth stood up from our table, her voice carrying the authority of a former bank president. For those who might be wondering about the numbers, she said, Harry's portfolio is valued at approximately $3.2 million. His monthly rental income exceeds most people's annual salaries. Dr. Mitchell, my principal, was staring at me with his mouth open. Ashley's maid of honor, Jennifer, who'd researched my salary so thoroughly, looked like she'd been slapped. But your house, Ashley stammered, your truck, your clothes, are exactly what I need them to be, I said calmly. I live modestly because I choose to, not because I have to. Then why didn't you tell us? Because you never asked. You assumed. You researched my official salary, but never wondered about any other income. You decided I was poor and treated me accordingly. The room was buzzing now, people whispering to each other, trying to process this information. Ashley's father stood up at his table. Harry, if this is true, then why did you let us think? I let you think what you wanted to think. Your daughter introduced me as just a janitor and described my wedding contribution as a pathetic sacrifice. I tried to correct her privately, but she told me to stay in my lane. I looked directly at Ashley. You wanted me in my lane. Well, my lane includes owning the resort where you're planning to spend your honeymoon. Patricia's voice came through the phone speaker again. Mr. Thompson, should I go ahead and confirm the reservation? The premium suite is available, and given the family connection, I can authorize the upgrade requests. All eyes were on me. This was the moment where I could either be gracious or petty, where I could show real class or sink to Ashley's level. Confirm the reservation, I said. Authorize all upgrades. Full spa package, room service, whatever they want. It's a wedding gift. Relief flooded Ashley's face. Then I continued. But I want it clear that this gift comes from a property owner to his son and daughter-in-law, not from a charity case to his social betters. The message was unmistakable. I was still being generous, but I was no longer being grateful for the privilege of being insulted. The reception hall buzzed with conversation as people processed what had just happened. I watched the social dynamics shift in real time. Dr. Mitchell approached our table first. Harry, I had no idea. All these years, you've been the same person I've always been, I said. I fix broken things at the school because I enjoy helping kids. The money was never the point. But $3.2 million? How? Ruth answered for me. 25 years of smart investing. Harry bought his first rental property in 1999 and never stopped learning. He understands real estate better than most professional investors. More people were gathering around our table now. Ashley's college friends, the ones who'd looked at me with pity an hour ago, were suddenly very interested in hearing about my investment strategy. Mr. Thompson, said Victoria, the investment professional from New York, I have to ask, what's your approach to property acquisition? An hour ago, she'd been explaining my financial limitations to me. Now she wanted investment advice. Buy what you understand, I said simply. I understand working-class neighborhoods, starter homes, properties where regular people want to live. I don't buy mansions or commercial complexes. I buy houses that remind me of the one I grew up in. And the resort was a distressed property. Previous owner, over-leveraged, needed to sell quickly. I had cash available. $2.8 million in cash? After 20 years of rental income, yes. The conversation continued, but I was watching Ashley across the room. She was standing near the head table, surrounded by her wedding party, but she looked isolated. Her maid of honor, Jennifer, kept glancing in my direction with an expression I couldn't quite read. Danny appeared at my elbow. Dad, we need to talk. We stepped out onto the venue's terrace, the same spot where I'd made my phone calls the night before. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Tell you what? That you're rich, Dad. That you own all these properties. That you didn't actually sacrifice anything for the wedding. I sacrificed plenty for this wedding, just not money. Danny was quiet for a moment, looking out over the river. I don't understand why you kept it secret. I didn't keep it secret. I just didn't announce it. And there's a difference. But I let people think whatever they wanted to think. Your wife decided I was a poor janitor who'd scraped together wedding money. She never asked about my finances. She just assumed. She's embarrassed, Dad. She should be embarrassed. She spent 6 months publicly describing my generosity as pathetic charity. She told her friends I'd been eating beans and rice to afford her wedding. Danny leaned against the terrace railing. So this was all, what? Some kind of lesson? This was me finally getting tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. We stood in silence for several minutes. Inside, I could hear the band playing, people laughing, the normal sounds of a wedding reception. What happens now? Danny asked. Now you go enjoy your wedding. Tomorrow you go on your honeymoon to a very nice resort that I happen to own. After that, we figure out how to be a family that treats each other with respect. And Ashley? Ashley learns that assumptions can be expensive. We went back inside to find the reception in full swing, but the energy had changed. People were still celebrating, but there were undercurrents of conversation that hadn't been there before. I overheard fragments as I moved through the room. Never would have guessed. Been sitting on millions this whole time. Makes you wonder what else we don't know. At the bar, Ashley's father cornered me. Harry, I owe you an apology. We made assumptions about your financial situation. You made the assumptions your daughter encouraged you to make. He winced. Ashley's been through a lot since we lost our money. Sometimes she overcompensates. By treating other people like charity cases? She didn't mean it that way. She meant it exactly that way. She told me I didn't belong in her social circle. She said I should stay in my lane. Ashley's father looked uncomfortable. What can we do to make this right? Treat people based on their character, not their bank statements. Around 9 o'clock, Ashley finally approached me. She looked beautiful, but shaken. Harry, I need to apologize. You do? I made assumptions. I was wrong. You were wrong about more than assumptions. You were wrong about how you treat people. Her eyes filled with tears. I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me. For 6 months, you described my contribution to your wedding as a pathetic sacrifice by a poor old man. You made me into a charity case in front of my friends, my colleagues, my community. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You saw what you expected to see and never looked deeper. How can I fix this? I looked at my new daughter-in-law, standing there in her expensive wedding dress, finally understanding that the world wasn't quite what she'd thought it was. You can start by treating people with respect, regardless of what you think they're worth. You can stop making assumptions about other people's lives, and you can remember that generosity doesn't require poverty. Will you forgive me? That was the question I'd been dreading because forgiveness meant letting go of my anger, and I wasn't quite ready to do that yet. I'll work on it, I said finally. But Ashley, this can't happen again. I won't be anyone's charity case, and I won't be grateful for the privilege of being insulted. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Now go dance with your husband. It's your wedding day. As the evening wound down, people continued approaching me with apologies, explanations, and sudden interest in my investment portfolio. But the conversation I remembered most was with Ruth as we prepared to leave. How do you feel? She asked. Lighter, I said, like I can finally breathe. Margaret would have been proud. Margaret would have handled this 6 months ago. Ruth laughed. Maybe. But she also would have told you that everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes. Looking across the room at Ashley and Danny, dancing their last dance as newlyweds, I realized Ruth was probably right. 3 weeks later, Danny and Ashley returned from their honeymoon. They'd had a wonderful time at Azure Bay Resort. The premium suite had exceeded their expectations. The spa treatments were world-class, and the staff had treated them like royalty, which in a way they were. Danny called me the day after they got back. Dad, we need to have dinner, all 3 of us. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown, nothing fancy. I arrived first, followed by Danny and Ashley. She looked different somehow, more subdued, less performative. How was the honeymoon? I asked. Incredible, Danny said. Dad, that resort is amazing. How long have you owned it? 3 years. Bought it from a developer who got overextended. The staff kept asking about you. Apparently, you're quite hands-on for an owner. I visit every few months. Make sure maintenance standards are being met. Check on renovations. Meet with the management team. It's a business, not just an investment. Ashley had been quiet through this exchange. Now she spoke up. Harry, I need to say something. I waited. I spent our entire honeymoon thinking about what happened at the wedding, about how I treated you, what I said, the assumptions I made. And I realized I don't just owe you an apology. I owe you my respect, not because you have money, but because you're a good man who's been nothing but generous to me, and I repaid that generosity with condescension. She took a breath. I also realized something else. I've been so focused on what I lost when my family went broke that I forgot how to see what other people have built. This felt different from her wedding night apology, more thoughtful, less desperate. Ashley, I appreciate that, but I need you to understand something. I'm not going to hide my success anymore to make other people comfortable. I'm proud of what I've built, and I'm proud of the work I do at the school. I understand. Do you? Because for 6 months, you treated my work like something shameful. You acted like being a janitor was embarrassing, like it somehow diminished my contribution to your wedding. Danny shifted in his seat. Dad, Ashley didn't mean... Let her answer. Ashley met my eyes directly. You're right. I was embarrassed by your job because I thought it reflected poorly on our family. That was wrong and stupid and classist, and I'm ashamed of it. Why were you embarrassed? Because I was afraid my friends would think less of me for marrying into a working-class family. Because I still thought status came from job titles instead of character. That was honest, at least. And now? Now I know that the janitor who fixed my in-laws' leak last month is the same man who owns the most beautiful resort I've ever stayed in. Now I know that assumptions make you look foolish. We ordered dinner and talked for 2 more hours, not about money or properties or wedding drama, but about normal family things. Ashley's new job prospects. Danny's plans for the school year, my thoughts about maybe scaling back my hours at work. As we prepared to leave, Ashley asked one more question. Harry, will you teach me about real estate investing? I was surprised. Why? Because I want to understand what you've built. And because Danny and I need to start building something ourselves instead of just spending money we don't have. That was perhaps the most mature thing I'd heard her say. Are you serious about learning, or are you just trying to make conversation? I'm serious. I want to understand how you went from a school maintenance worker to a property owner. I want to know how you made those decisions, how you analyzed properties, how you built something sustainable. Over the following months, Ashley proved she was serious. She read the books I recommended, attended property investment seminars, even came with me to look at a duplex I was considering buying. She had good instincts and asked smart questions. More importantly, she treated the process with respect instead of seeing it as some get-rich-quick scheme. Danny was proud of both of us. His wife was learning to build wealth instead of just spending it, and his father was finally sharing the knowledge he'd accumulated over 25 years. The three of us developed a new dynamic. Not the grateful poor father and his social climbing daughter-in-law, but a family of adults who respected each other's contributions and supported each other's goals. I never did tell Ashley about the other properties I owned or the full extent of my net worth. That information would come gradually, as she proved she could handle it responsibly. But I did tell her something else. Ashley, the most important thing I've learned is that wealth isn't about impressing people. It's about having choices. The choice to be generous without sacrifice. The choice to take risks without fear. The choice to stay in your lane or change lanes entirely. She smiled. And the choice to correct people when they tell you to stay in a lane that isn't yours. Exactly. If you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated because of your job, your appearance, or your circumstances, remember this. People's assumptions about you aren't facts about you. Stay humble, but don't stay silent when humility becomes humiliation. Sometimes the quietest people hold the biggest surprises.